We're Sickness Youth Group from St. Joseph's Church in Toms River, New Jersey, connecting faith and life. And you're watching Realfaith TV.
It's hard to forgive someone right away, so it does take work, and you have to work towards rebuilding that trust.
Recently, in the past year or so, I've had a lot of experience with friends and boyfriends being really mean, and forgiveness has definitely let me open my mind to a lot of different things, and it can be really hard, but it's definitely worth it in the end.
Jesus set the example when he was at the cross, when he said, "The Father, forgive those who have sinned."
3 years ago, my grandfather died suddenly. I was so mad at God. It took me almost a month to forgive him because it must be all part of his plan, and I know one day he'll call me home so I can see him again.
Jesus wants me to forgive others the way he forgives me. So when I forgive others, it makes me feel good.
It's easy to just say I'm sorry and move on, but the truth is that it's still there, and it still bothers you. It could bother you the next day, the next couple of days, next week, and it sticks with you. So it really is hard to truly forgive someone. It's something you have to work towards and build upon.
Recently, I've had a friend that betrayed me, and I went to go forgive her, and she kind of just walked away. I don't even know how the relationship is gonna pan out in the future, but I feel better inside now that I forgave her. I realized that in order for the relationship to keep building, she had to accept my forgiveness.
E.H. Chapin wrote, "Never does the human soul appear so strong as when it forgoes revenge and dares forgive an injury."
And Mahatma Gandhi said, "The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong."
Are you strong enough to forgive others when they trespass against you?
Do you find it easy or difficult to forgive?
And of course, some things are easier to forgive than others.
Either way, it is what Jesus has modeled for us and what he calls us to do.
Forgiveness. That's what we'll be talking about today. Hi everyone, I'm Emily.
And I'm Thomas.
And this is Realfaith TV.
We'd like to thank the Cygnus Youth Group from St. Joseph's Parish in Toms River, New Jersey for helping us open the show today.
And for sharing some of their experiences of forgiving others.
We'll talk with another member of the youth group later as part of our wildcard segment.
Today's spotlight guest is Dan Duddy, who responded to God's grace in an almost unimaginable situation.
He forgave the young man who was responsible for his younger brother's death.
Let's meet Dan now, where he reminisces about the kind of person his brother Francis was and the impact he made on the world he left behind.
The main thing that I remember is his smile, his glowing aura when he walked into a room. He was a special friend to every friend that he had, a special brother to myself, to my sisters. People loved his inclusive nature. To a shy person, he brought life out of you. To a joyous person, he was just a great person to be next to and go on any escapade that you might think of. He was the person that would reach out to the person in need. He was a very sensitive, caring person, but he was also a very strong person because of how courageous he was when it came to someone else in need that maybe needed him but didn't know they needed him. We certainly do things to keep Francis's memory alive. The best thing that we do is really just reflect back on some of the happy memories, and we just tell stories about Francis so that flame never burns out. We use the story, we use the tragedy in a positive way. My father has spoke at local high schools and really just shared his personal story as to how it's affected his life and how the dangers of drunk driving are real and that they can happen, and that you aren't invincible, and that it can happen to you. If I could have one more day, it'd be a long day. That's for sure. I don't know what I'd say to him. I'd probably just follow him around and do whatever he wanted to do. I would just try and live a little bit more like him.
I actually had the pleasure of knowing Francis, and he really was an amazing person. You could always count on him to put a smile on your face whenever you were sad, and he just had such a light about him, and I know that our community really missed him, and it was a complete shock.
He seems like a great role model for all of us.
He was.
Let's go back to our interview with Dan as he recounts the tragic day he learned that his brother Francis was dead.
My brother and Connor that night got into a car accident. There was alcohol involved, and they wound up crashed against a tree. And I don't know specifically how it happened or why it happened, but all I can remember is I was at the gym on that Saturday morning on February 14th, and I got a text message from my cousin, who I hear from semi-regularly, and he just said, "I love you." And I said, "I love you too." And he never texted me back. And then I got a call from my dad, and he said, "Danny, come home." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Something happened." And I said, "Why?" And I begged him, and I yelled at him to tell me what. And I don't know how he held it together, but he just said, "Danny, come home, trust me." And I said, "Okay." And I got in my car and I drove home, and I walked through the front door, and my dad could barely get through the sentence, and he just said, "We lost Francis." After my dad told me, I just squeezed my dad and hugged him, and I hugged my mom, and I hugged all my brothers and sisters, and I kind of blacked out. I was just so shocked, and I was just so sad.
I can't even imagine what they've been feeling that day.
It's tragic. Well, let's see what our studio guests have to say about it.
Okay, they are Michael,
Rebecca,
Mike,
Danny,
Joe,
Monique,
and Ella. What has been your experience with forgiveness? Are you guys good at it?
My experience with forgiveness has been very hard. I've had a lot of trials that I've dealt with in my 18 years on earth, and I know that forgiving someone, I don't like to do it at all, because I want them to know that they hurt me. I want to have a reason to want to put revenge on that person. So I wouldn't say that I'm good at it at all. It's a very tough thing to do, and when you do it, it's an amazing feeling almost.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely not easy to do.
It depends on the situation, I guess, because when it comes to something that completely shatters your foundation or just shakes up your entire life, then it's your emotions get in the way, and it's not so easy to just do the Catholic or Christian thing, It's like you're just too caught up in the whole thing, and you just need time to heal a little bit before you can take the step.
Plus, a lot of people say forgiving gets easy as you get older, but I disagree with that, because the way I see it, as you get older, the things that you have to forgive people for tend to get more serious and more severe. And yeah, I think as you get older and mature more, it actually can get more difficult.
Sometimes I feel that it's more or less my pride that gets in the way of me forgiving someone. I feel like they don't deserve it, more or less, and I feel that once I do, it's relieving almost to feel that they're forgiven, it's over, and it's done.
I actually got to do the interview with Dan Duddy, and one of the things that he kept saying over and over again was that it was almost natural for him to forgive in this sort of situation. And when he and his dad walked out of the court after they had forgiven Connor, they felt this big weight lifted off them. And I think knowing that, it's reassuring to know that the forgiveness will give you strength, that forgiving someone will make even you feel better?
I have to say, if I were in Dan's place, I don't know if I could forgive him. You know, I mean, thank God that I'm not in that situation, but I think it's amazing how, you know, he's talking about this and how he forgives the person who killed his brother.
It just shows how much he trusts in God and how amazing his faith is.
Well, in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 18, the Apostle Peter approaches Jesus and asks how many times he is required to forgive someone.
Is 7 times enough, he wonders?
To which Jesus responds, I do not say to you 7 times, but 70 times 7.
In other words, there is no limit to forgiveness.
We forgive others because God forgives us.
God's forgiveness is limitless.
His mercy is endless.
Let's go back to our spotlight guest, Dan, who will share with us the day when he and his father reached out to forgive his brother's friend, Connor, during his sentencing hearing.
It definitely was a process initially to say to myself and make the decision, yes, I want to forgive Connor. In the beginning, it's hard. You're angry, you're sad, you feel a lot of things that are self-serving and selfish, quite frankly. You want the world to give you your brother back. You want everyone else to suffer because you're suffering, and that's a process for sure. And you have to reflect a lot. You have to pray a lot. You have to spend time with others that are like-minded and that can relate to the situation. I feel lucky that the relatability portion of it was given to me just because of how many people surrounded me and surrounded our family. A lot of it came from being so close to the Hannafins as well and knowing Connor. And it just made that process a little bit easier. Connor's reaction to the forgiveness was, I guess, what you would expect. He was surprised. It wasn't something he asked for, at least initially. I'm sure he was scared to ask for anything or even communicate. So he was definitely shocked. He was really, really thankful. And he was really happy to know that we gave him that gift. I hope that it empowers him to use it in a positive way, to deal with the pain that he's going to deal with, and to help others avoid the situation that he put himself in, to help others avoid the situation that Francis put himself in, and to really take that empowerment and really live the life that he was meant to live before this happened.
Connor was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison.
He received a lighter punishment partly due to the fact that Dan and his father testified at Connor's hearing and offered their full forgiveness and full support for Connor.
Do you think you'd be able to forgive someone in a situation like this?
If I were in the situation where a drunk driver took the life of one of my family members, I don't know if I would have the strength to forgive that person.
I think it's important to forgive because it helps you to move on with your life and to continue doing what you would do and what they would want you to do.
I mean, even the families of the people who were killed in that church shooting, they were able to forgive the shooter.
And that's amazing that they can do that. The Our Father contains a line about forgiveness that should make us stop and think about what we are saying.
And forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us.
First, we ask for God, the source of forgiveness, to forgive us.
Then we ask God to show us the type of forgiveness we show others.
If we do not forgive others, if we hold on to the hurts and misdeeds of our brothers and sisters in Christ, we limit God's mercy in our lives.
We put up a roadblock between God's grace and our ability to forgive.
In refusing to forgive our brothers and sisters, our hearts are closed, and their hardness makes them impervious to the Father's merciful love.
But in confessing our sins, our hearts are open to His grace.
Next, our wildcard guest, Sean, from St. Joseph's Youth Group in Toms River, describes how he had to learn to forgive a close friend.
In 7th grade, I dated this girl, and dated for 2 months, and it was pretty awesome, but we wound up breaking up, just different places in our lives, and it hurt. And it took me a while to be able to forgive her because she was my first girlfriend, and it was just, my heart was crushed. but I grew to forgive her and becoming a better person for the whole learning experience of our relationship. And it's funny because now we're calling each other almost every day because we're going off to college in 3 months, and I've been giving her advice and helping her work through it, and it's just like old times.
Our emotions can sometimes direct the thoughts and actions. They can take over so much that we cannot find our way to forgiveness. Have you ever had any experiences where the emotions kind of kept or delayed your thoughts and actions from having forgiving someone?
A lot of times people will treat me badly for a while before I realize what's going on. And when I look back and kind of start to understand the way they had treated me in the past, it makes me really upset. And I think that feeling of upsetment and hurt and anger makes it harder to forgive people.
Yeah, I think sadness is one of those emotions that makes it so hard to forgive someone, because then you think, well, this person made me feel this way, why should I forgive them?
I think a big one is anger too, because I know right now something's going on in my life where it's just like I'm so angry at this person because of the way they're choosing to live and choosing to hurt me. And I'm not ready to forgive someone that's still living that way. It's too hard to forgive someone that's not gonna let go of what they're doing. You know, if they're not ready to give up the thrill of it all, then I'm not ready to give them my forgiveness and my pardon and love again.
I've definitely learned from my own life experience that anger is just so powerful, and it can really change someone as a person. And for a little while it changed me, but then I realized, wow, this is really taking over me. It can distort our judgment, it can change our personality, and it's just so important to let go of it, because not only can we hurt other people, we will damage ourselves.
I know that my emotions, like Danny said, anger and sadness, between the both of them, they're always combating each other. Forgiveness definitely is something I have to work on, but it always works out in the end, and it's always a good thing to do.
I think it's definitely something that we all have to work on. Jesus shows us the ultimate moment of forgiveness on the cross.
As his accusers put him to death, he cries out,
"Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do."
You and I would likely be caught up in the injustice of the moment if we were in Christ's place.
That would be the natural response. Christ has a supernatural response.
He asks for forgiveness. He gives the benefit of the doubt. He looks on those who hurt him with love.
Let's go back to our spotlight guest, Dan, where he talks about how forgiveness is not a one and done type of thing.
And how praying the chaplet of St. Michael provided him with the strength to move forward after the loss of his brother.
Forgiveness definitely isn't a one and done thing. In the beginning, it was daily. As time goes on, it might be something that doesn't happen as frequently, but you certainly have to remind yourself why it's so important for Francis, for yourself, for Connor, for the rest of your family, for the community. I was definitely angry with God, for sure. He took away a really happy part of my life and of our family's life. Someone that was such a tremendous gift to especially my younger siblings and my sisters. That anger subsided. It comes back from time to time. It's extremely less frequent now. My faith in God and my belief in eternal life helps me through the process personally, because I know that I'll meet him again, and that's a happy thought. Time with Francis was always happy, and time with him again, whenever that is, will, I know for a fact, be as happy as it was, if not 10 times as happy. I think it was the second or third night when we were spending time here at the house, it was soon after the tragedy, and we all prayed the chaplet of St. Michael, and it just stuck with me, and it's something that has a lot of strong words that give me strength, and because it really is a battle. It's not something you forgive and you move on. A prayer that gives you strength, because it does take courage, is something that helps. And for me, that's a prayer that I pray often.
So how about you guys? What role does prayer play in your ability to forgive others?
I feel like forgiveness is kind of like taking a leap of faith because you don't know how the other person is going to act. They could either take advantage of your kindness or they could actually be genuine and like start being friends with you again. So I think prayer helps me in giving me strength to go ahead and take that leap of faith, you know?
I think it's especially important to pray even more when we're trying to forgive someone because we can't forgive on our own. It's impossible. We need God's help.
My first instinct, I know for me, is not always to just forgive. I feel that I need God's help to pray and think on it first and be prepared to forgive.
To forgive someone can be this like huge task that we can't even comprehend until we ask for God's help. But it's also time. Like you need time to reflect and like meditate in prayer about what really happened to you, why it hurt so much. Like heal your heart first, and then you're able to fully just, give like sincere forgiveness to that other person, not just going through the motions.
I agree with what both Danny and Ella just said. I was talking to one of my priests about helping me with forgiveness, and he was telling me how being in a situation with someone who hurt you is like them binding you with chains, and praying to God and asking him to help you with forgiveness is like how giving that person the permission to release you from those chains, and you will no longer be held in their prison. So when you forgive them, it's like, the chains being released, but also that weight being lifted off of you.
And I think that not only will praying give you the strength to forgive someone else, but by praying for that other person, it will maybe give them the strength to not do it again, whatever it was that they did.
And I know that prayer is definitely important when it comes to forgiveness because, I know that I've asked God to forgive me so many times, and, the least I could do is forgive someone else.
One more thing I would just like to add that my mom told me that I've really taken to heart is that forgiveness, it isn't as much of an emotion as it is an act. Because if we just base forgiveness completely on our emotions and just wait until we're emotionally ready, that's going to take forever. So I just find it really important to just reconcile as soon as we can. We do need some time, but try not to wait forever because not only will we start to give ourselves peace, but we'll give the other person peace by letting them know that, we forgive them, even though we might not emotionally be there.
Yes, well, finally, our spotlight guest, Dan, gives us advice to those struggling to forgive.
Let's hear what he has to say.
To anybody that's struggling with forgiveness, I don't know if I can articulate it, but I can explain how it felt walking out of the courthouse. My dad and I looked at each other and we felt like there was this huge weight that was lifted off our shoulders. And if we had went the path of revenge and if we went the path of trying to pass on this sadness and this anger that we had by convicting and by asking for maximum punishment or for whatever situation you're in, if your instinct is revenge and an eye for an eye, then you'll always have that on your shoulders. And when you just forgive and you truly forgive with no agenda whatsoever, and you don't do it to glorify yourself or to get something back later on, you set yourself free, and it allows you to move on with your life, and it allows you to have those happy memories rather than every time you think of your brother, you think of, well, someone else has it better, and the person that did this, they're still on earth, and my brother's gone. You'll just be in a broken record, a constant cycle of anger. And that mourning process will never go away. And mine's never gonna go away, but forgiveness allows me to just do an interview like this and smile when I talk about my brother. It's hard to articulate, but when I walked out of the courthouse that day, it felt like there was a 2,000-pound weight that just got lifted off my shoulders.
I think the most important thing that we can all take from Dan's testimony is that just holding on to that anger and that bitterness is really going to hold us back, like spiritually and in our relationships with other people. So it's just really important to just let it all go so we can truly be happy again.
I agree with what Danny said. I know Dan said in his spotlight about revenge, how if you want revenge on that person, that's almost crippling to not be able to forgive that person because you can't move on with your life. So when you forgive that person, like he said, it's the weight lifted off your shoulders and you feel peace and that person also will feel peace.
Well, forgiveness is not an easy task.
We need to remember that it is only possible because of God's grace and his response of forgiveness towards us.
Forgiveness is not always accompanied by a good feeling.
In fact, we may feel like returning hurt with hurt.
Yet Christ asks us to forgive not because we feel like it, but because it is the right thing to do.
As one article put it, to forgive is to willfully bear and embrace a wound that someone else has given to you.
We can only do this because Christ has already done it for us.
Through his grace, we are able to choose the higher path, like Dan and his family, and choose mercy and forgiveness.
So what has your faith taught you about forgiveness and how to practice it?
We'd love to hear from you.
Contact us at realfaithtv.com.
Or share your thoughts with us on Twitter.
And we'll leave you today with the words of Immaculée Ilibagiza, a Rwandan genocide survivor who took the radical step of forgiving those who murdered her family.
In her book, Left to Tell, she writes, "I knew that my heart and mind would always be tempted to feel anger, to find blame and hate.
But I resolved that when the negative feelings came upon me, I wouldn't wait for them to grow or fester.
I would always turn immediately to the source of all true power.
I would turn to God and let his love and forgiveness protect and save me."
And that's certainly our prayer for you too.
Thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time on Real Faith TV.
God bless.